What's going on, Pokemon Go trainers? Welcome to episode 21 of the Lured Up Podcast Creator Series, bringing your favorite content creators to talk about their work, process, and the game that brings it all together, Pokemon Go. Lured Up is part of the Pokemon Professor Network, and today is Saturday, December 5th, 2020. I'm your host, Ken Pescatore, and this week I'm joined by my good friend, Chris, from the GoCast Podcast. Chris, what's up, man? Welcome.
Hey, Ken. Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm thrilled to be part of the Creator Series. I've been on your show a couple of times, and you've been on ours as well, but this is a new first, and I'm thrilled.
I know. I'm psyched. I'm psyched to have you on here so we could talk about podcasting. I know you're a podcast nerd like I am.
You bet.
So I'm very excited to talk about the medium and, you know, maybe we'll talk about the game. No, well, I am very excited, and it's cool because a lot of the feedback, when I put the tweet up, a lot of people were coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, yes, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about podcasting. I want a podcast, or I want feedback from my own podcast. So it's cool that people are, already looking at this from a technical side and not just, talking about a Pokemon Go event.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean? So I'm super, it's
a nice change of pace.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do. I'm looking at the notes here. I wrote, "Who's your daddy and what does he do?" But introduce yourself, and we'll get things started.
I mean, if you want me to give you a short explanation of what my father does for work and what his name is, we could do that. But I'm assuming you mean me.
Yes, you. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey there, everybody. My name is Chris, and I host a podcast similar to Lured Up, but different in just enough ways that we coexist peacefully in the podcast sphere. It's called the GoCast Podcast. We have an emphasis on goal setting over there, which is becoming more and more important as the 40-plus experience has now been released globally. Go beyond all that good stuff.
Yes.
And I have my co-host with me. His name is Kyle. He's not with us tonight, but he is on every single episode of our podcast, which I would, of course, encourage you to go check out, especially if you like Lured Up. We have similar good energies.
We're going to get to it, but I gotta say, man, I fucking love the dynamic that you and Kyle have because it's like you bring like this wonderful, wholesome energy, and Kyle's just like, nah, fuck that. But you guys don't curse. But he's like, nah, fuck that. He's like, nah, I hate that shit. That shit sucks. I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to talk about it because I crack up every time because I'm like, I just love when you're like hyping up like 10 minutes of hyping up an event, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, Kyle, what do you think? And he just like, he's like, pull, just fucking shoots it down.
It's so trash.
It's so good. I love that shit so much. But why don't we start off with some of the basics? And like I said, you said, I've had you on the show before, but let's get to know you a little bit personally. What's your history with the Pokemon franchise? And what other forms of Pokemon do you enjoy?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So Pokemon is one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I picked it up when I was really young. So as soon as it came to the States, I watched the anime. I played the games from Red and Blue when they first came out. I have bought every generation of games and played through them. I bought the cards from a young age. Kind of took a break on that, but they're coming back in a really big way. And I see myself looking over at a table. I've got 2 unopened booster boxes, and boy, where did that money go? Huh?
Yikes! You sold some paper for some cardboard. That's all.
I sure did,
awesome.
And what an upgrade that was. But yeah, no, I love Pokemon, and I play all the games. I play, if there's a new game that comes out on mobile, I play it over there as well. Like I do it all. Pokemon Go is my mainstay nowadays for sure. But I definitely played like the DLCs for Sword and Shield. I'm just anything Pokemon, I'm there.
Nice. That's awesome. And do you have a favorite Pokemon? I know that's a fucking loaded question, but
I do. Actually, I have, my answer used to be Cyndaquil, and it really is Cyndaquil still, but it's kind of tied. I love Caesar a ton. And I think it's worth mentioning as a tie for that favorite spot.
Aren't you like the bug trainer, like the bug gym leader?
I love bug types. I adore them. They're great.
But the real reason we're here is to talk about content and talk about podcasting. So I know that you have a long history with podcasting even prior to GoCast. So when did you start podcasting? And then ultimately, what inspired you to start podcasting about Pokemon Go?
Okay, well, I started podcasting back in October of 2010. with a podcast that's still actually going today, even though I no longer host it. It's called LeagueCast. Yes, the naming convention is a thing there. Guilty as charged. But it covers a game called League of Legends. A little known game. Nobody knows what League of Legends is. I'm just kidding. It's a huge game. It's hugely popular, and oh my god. But did that for a very long time, and then passed off to some good friends that started off as listeners, but became good real life friends and ended up picking up the show, and they're still running with it. I think they're in the episode 3 or 400 or something like that. Every once in a while I check in.
Shit.
And yeah,
that's awesome.
They're killing it. They really are. Their Discord community is huge. They're doing great. But that show, when I originally had it, I was in high school when I first started it, like a senior in high school. And we had 7 dudes on, all my friends.
That's
at the same
insane.
time. It is insane. And I've never done that again because that was a bad choice.
So wait, was it a remote thing, or were you all in the same room?
We were remote, yeah, and it kept us kind of together and very close over college. The podcast and the recording kind of inspired us to use a common TeamSpeak server, which we used forever, and now we've kind of moved over to a Discord server. Some people are in Mumble and stuff like that, but I really kind of credit the podcast for keeping a lot of us together from high school to today, post-college, several years.
That's awesome.
Dude, that's the magic of projects like that. Podcasting in general is magic. But I digress. I'm sure we'll get to that stuff.
It's League of Legends is one of those things. Like I love watching it. I love watching competitive League of Legends. I've played it, of course, but I mean, I don't know what the fuck is ever going on. And the shoutcasters always go absolutely ballistic. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I don't see any of the action. Like all this shit's happening, but it's just so exciting to watch and so visually pretty, with just all the shenanigans that are fucking popping off at the same time.
Oh, for sure.
I gotta say, I do listen to League of Legends inspired music all the time. Like my Amazon Music, dude. I love fucking League of Legends music so much. Like
the KDA
stuff?
Sad
Mummy, dude. Yeah, like all that's that. And even like like Legends Never Die and fucking shit like oh dude, I love it. I love it so much. It's so cool that it's inspired, and they put so much production value behind some of that stuff. So it's cool that they cover that form of the medium. But what was it about Pokemon Go that brought you back to podcasting post LeagueCast?
Yeah, so I eventually kind of took a step back from LeagueCast. We kind of brought it down to, like, people started, not having time or losing interest in the game, and so we kind of all shed the game after a while, and I was, shed the show, rather, after a while, and I was one of the last people standing from the original core group, and it was me and the 3 new guys, essentially, and then I just kind of bowed out, because the game wasn't holding me interest as much anymore, and I had other things I wanted to focus on. I was, it was at the end of college at this point in time, and I needed to focus on other things, so I took a break from podcasting for about a year or so, and then found Pokemon Go, and I was like, oh man. Oh,
I gotta talk about this.
I gotta do it. Yes, absolutely. So I played it for about a year, and then I met my co-host Kyle. We both worked at the same Starbucks store, and I was like, "Hey,
nice.
You're hopelessly nerdy, just like me. What would you say if we did a weekly show about this game?" And he was like, "No, Chris, there's no way we'll have enough to talk about for a weekly show." And I shoved this in his face daily. I mean, come on. There's too much to talk about, Ken. I mean, come on a weekly basis. Sometimes we're like, we got to cut this show down. It's getting too long. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's definitely something that challenges people in our medium, because when you have a weekly, and I actually have a little bit about this in the itinerary down the page a bit, but it really is super tough to fit a week's worth of news in an hour show without just turning it into like diarrhea of the mouth, you know what I mean? Blabbermouthing, right. Because there's so much, and it's like, I don't get me wrong, I love fucking long podcasts, but it's like with Pokemon Go, there's just so much data and information that I record for an hour and 15 minutes and my fucking head explodes, and I like eating shit this stuff, all day long. So it's like, I can only imagine, a listener who's like, probably listening to more than one Pokemon Go show, and like, there's just data and info and numbers and Pokemon and dates and all this shit. And it's like, yeah, I totally get that. But that's awesome that you met Kyle as part of, like in the beginning, like that you really didn't have you were workers, employees with each other, but not like, you didn't know him for a long time before the show. I kind of love that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we were like friendly. We were definitely like kind of friends, but like, we're incredibly close. He's like one of my best friends in the world now, and it's definitely because of this podcast.
That's super cool. Yeah. And just to give a little back history, I remember it was GoFest 2018, and we had our Mareep Up, which was our yearly podcast meetup at GoFest in Chicago. And you were there, and I think that wasn't it like that week was your first episode?
Yeah, we put out the first episode right before GoFest. Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
Yep.
I remember that, and it was so funny because you were so quiet and sitting at the bar. And it was just like, it's like that you got the Pokemon Go radio guys, wasted,
anything but quiet,
falling all over themselves, like like really hilarious, drinking whiskey at like 1 a.m. It was so good.
Oh man.
And then, in 2019, we had the Mareep Up at Monk's Pub in Chicago, and it was a fucking blast, man. It was so cool to have the progression of having you there, kind of, okay, hey, I'm a podcaster too. I just put out episode 1, and then it's like a year later, we're fucking raging in Monk's Pub.
We're hosting we're actually hosting the Mareep Up that year, and oh man. Yeah. Yeah, it was quite the dynamic shift, and I couldn't be more thankful for the journey and the people I've met. I mean, in particular, like Ken, you and I have gotten incredibly close over the past couple of years of doing this and talking about podcasts and, working in the same space and stuff like that. It's great. This is so different than the League of Legends community for sure. Let me just say that.
I was listening to the Giant Bombcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts.
Oh, me too.
That I use them as my, pretty much my meal ticket into the gaming world, so I can keep my finger on the pulse. And Jan Ochoa from Giant Bomb, who I've had on Lured Up, he's like the Pokemon voice from the Bombcast. He's talking about like different online communities and how everyone's fucking miserable and they all suck. And he's like, they're talking about like, man, we really want to find a good community that's friendly and loving and all this. And Jan's like, yeah, Pokemon community, that's not the community. And it's like that I hear you talk about League of Legends and you're like, no, that community is toxic. And it's like,
yeah, no. And I mean, it's also more so it's punctuated by the other podcasts that we had at the time. It was kind of cutthroat. We were all kind of young, male centric. And so there was a lot of testosterone flying around. You know what I mean? Everybody's just talking shit. Everybody's okay. I actually have a very short story I could tell you right now. That's hilarious.
Yes, please.
The guys that took over the podcast, the other show that was kind of in the sphere, I think they still are technically in the sphere, it's called Trinity Force, which is a very big League of Legends podcast as well. They hosted a tournament. It was like a 3v3 tournament or something like that, or a 5v5. I don't know. It was a tournament. And the LeagueCast guys, my buddies, signed up for it and swept the tournament, right?
Oh,
and it was streamed. And at the end, they were like, you guys have anything to say? And they said something along the lines of blah, blah, blah. Like, thanks for having us. And their final words were, Trinity Force sucks. Listen to LeagueCast.
Brilliant.
It's like, yes, brilliant. That's it. That's what you need to win.
That's awesome. That is so great. That it's we'll talk about it in a moment, but yeah, the community aspect of Pokemon Go is interesting, but luckily for us, the podcast community is a nice segment of the Pokemon Go community proper, which is fantastic. And I couldn't ask for a better community. So we'll get there in a second, but let's talk about Kyle a little bit, just because he isn't here, and I do want to talk about the dynamic that you have with Kyle, because with me, it's the same kind of thing with Adam. Adam has a very, unique approach and this real nice guy kind of thing. And then I typically come in like, guns a-blazing. What's the dynamic like between you and Kyle, and what are the things that you typically agree on or disagree on when it comes to the game?
Oh, geez.
Everything.
Oh, man. Yeah, it is kind of like everything. Him and I, but watch out when we do agree, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So I would say if I'm an up, Kyle is a down. And so that brings our opinion kind of in the middle. And we kind of take pride in me being positive and him being a little bit of a naysayer and being devil's advocate, because it really kind of does represent everybody's perspective equally, which is what we're really trying to do. But I will say that more often than not, we kind of like fallen into this role, and it might actually feed into our opinions a little bit more than we initially thought. Right. So I actually have built a behavior of trying to find the silver lining in things because of this repetitive, 2 hours of recording a week sort of thing that I do with him now, where he just kind of like will be a realist and kind of bring me back down to earth when I'm just like, this event is so great. It's this, it's that, all of that. He's like, yeah, but it could be better. I'm like, yeah, dude, but okay, fine. I guess let's move on to the next news item.
No, I love when you're like, yeah, I was out there grinding. I caught 800 Pokemon, blah, blah, blah. How about you, Kyle? I'd be like, yeah, I caught 5 Pokemon this week. So it's like, I fucking love it, dude. I fall on the floor. It's so good.
The best part is because we set goals every single week, which is like our big thing that we do. And then we set them at the end of the show. And then at the beginning of the next episode, we review them and talk about our success or lack thereof more often than not. And my favorite is when Kyle shows up and I list off the 4 things that he said he was going to do. And I'm like, did you catch, whatever the current legendary is? He goes, pause. No. Yeah. And then it's 0 for 4. And he's like, yeah, I didn't open the game for like 2 days. I'm like, Kyle, what are you doing? It's great, though. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I love that so much. No, it's the dynamic really is awesome. And if anyone in our community hasn't heard GoCast, I definitely recommend checking them out. It's a totally different vibe than Lured Up, and I think that's what makes it really cool. But what would our, a listener of Lured Up, what can they expect when they listen to GoCast if they've never listened before? And you talked about the goals. I mean, I think that's awesome. But you and Kyle do some really awesome recurring segments with like Pokelore and Gear Up and all that stuff. And I love that shit. Tell us a little bit about, what our listeners would, could expect if they've never checked you out before.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so one of the things, so Ken and Adam are very purposeful with their explicit tag. It's so that they can be them unfiltered, and that's their go-to. Kyle and I do something different. We chose early on that we would have a family-friendly tag, and so we've worked very hard to keep it clean, sort of thing. So there's a tonal shift there. But as far as content is concerned, Ken's right. We've got a bunch of different segments. We do cover the news in like the first, I would say it used to be half, but now it's like the first third because the back half is so full of stuff.
Yeah.
We do news, and then we do a Pokelore segment where we focus on a particular evolutionary line and talk about its Pokedex entries, what the best moveset is, its max CP, all that sort of stuff. And really kind of slowly uncover just how dark the Pokemon world is, because it is. Oh my god!
Talking about like Drifloon or something like that. It's like
yeah, or Phantom. It's like the soul of a lost child or whatever it is. Oh my gosh,
I love that.
All that stuff.
There's always the bad. Someone was having a bad day writing those Dex entries. You know what I mean? It's like how fucked up can I make this without like getting fired? It's like hide your children, hide your wife.
How can I manifest my depression and my frustration in a Pokemon? Okay, here we go.
And how often do you record? And do you typically have a release schedule, or is it?
Yeah, so we record weekly. We record Tuesday nights unless something goes awry, which it can every once in a while, but kind of rarely. And I really try to get it out on Thursdays, but more often than not, I end up publishing sometime on Friday, just because the work week is rather demanding, especially this time of year. So that's pretty consistent with that sort of stuff. We also stream on Mondays and Thursdays on Twitch, do some art streams. We do some, we just finished a Crystal version. We do that on Thursdays.
Yeah, that's perfect. I do want to talk about Twitch because I see you guys getting busy, over there. And, I've joined you a couple times when you do your art stream. So tell us about that a little bit, because that's a departure from Pokemon Go coverage, but it's like all the podcast listeners and the Pokemon Go people are the ones in the chat. So it's so cool to see them in a little bit of a different environment. You know what I mean? So tell us about what's going on over at Twitch.
Yeah, definitely. So on Twitch, we have 2 recurring consistent stream days, and we do some other fun things along the way. But on Monday nights, I've been doing this thing called Mashup Mondays, where everybody's seen the Poke Fusion stuff. There's a website, it's called like Pokemon Combiner or something like that, where it combines 2 Pokemon. But basically, I have patrons of ours in our Discord submit like up to 10 Pokemon. We put them on a wheel, we spin the wheel, and then whatever the first 2 Pokemon that wheel lands on, we combine them live on stream, and I draw using my iPad, which I then put on the stream. And it's really fun. It usually lasts for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, and sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good, but every single time it's a chill stream. And I really kind of use it as an excuse to get back into drawing. It's been a drought of like 5 or 6 years. And this has been really kind of a spiritual experience for me, if I'm being super honest and a little dramatic about it.
No, but dude, that's awesome. And, you know, when it comes to podcasting, you know, why I got into podcasting is because I was desperate for some kind of creative outlet. You know, I was a musician. I toured for years and years and years. And, you know, once the family life kind of took over, the music and the touring stopped, and I really had that itch that I needed some form of creative outlet. So when I got into podcasting, it was it was like this, you know, holy moment. It was just like, oh my God, I feel complete again. So I totally dig that. I love that, man, because you're killing it with the art. It's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
But I think it was a Mr. Mime giraffe rig once, though, that gave me
giraffe rhyme?
Dude, it gave me fucking nightmares. It was like the ultimate nightmare fuel. I was like, this is brilliant. I go, I'm so glad I'm here for this one, because this is exactly what I would want to see coming into like this mashup thing. It was so freaking cool. I love that. But what about like the old school shit? You did Crystal too, right? Are you done with that?
Yeah, we just finished it up this week, and holy shit, was that a slog, man.
Yeah,
my God.
You've been doing that for a while.
It was 20 episodes of 90-minute streams at the very least, yes. It was a long time. Yeah, dude, Red's a bitch. Let me just tell you that. There's quite the level increase at the very end of that game.
Yeah.
It's insane. But yeah, so on Thursdays we do old school games. We're doing playthroughs. We did Red version first. I took all those playthroughs, and they're on our YouTube because they kind of time out on Twitch. So they're over there as well. But then we switched over to Crystal version because it's my favorite version from Generation 2. And next we're going to be going into Generation 3, which is Kyle's favorite generation. So he actually gets to drive the car this time. I'm very excited for that. I get to be sidecar and harass him the entire time, and I can't wait to do that.
Make a left.
Yeah. go. Chris, that's a wall.
I'm telling you, there's a door here. No,
check for items. Just keep clicking A. Move around.
Nice. So you have a nice blend of content and diversification. And you know, whenever I have people on the show, I always talk about the importance of diversification. But with Pokemon, the franchise is so diverse and so broad that you can be a variety streamer or a variety content creator and never leave the Pokemon franchise. And that's what I think is so freaking cool about it, because there is so much to talk about in so many different formats and so many different things that you can have like this exceptionally diverse content mix, but it's still all Pokemon. And, you know, I love that. And, you know, the TCG, it's like, I don't want to talk about it too much here, because it's like, I've got a special episode coming up, because, you know, I've been a TCG fan my entire life. That's how I started with Pokemon. And, you know, the wave of TCG is just absolutely absurd right now. Not only from, you know, the market and market values of cards and things like that, but also with popularity. I mean, it's fucking insane. You can't find shit. You go to stores, they're wiped out. It's wild. So I'm going to have a panel of people to talk about the effect of this wave on the core TCG kind of community, because it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting how the core TCG community is reacting to Pokemon Go players coming into the TCG. And it's I can't wait. I can't fucking wait, because it's like, I mean, I have feelings too. And it's like, and it's so hard to talk about it without sounding like a gatekeeper. You know what I mean? Because it's like, no, they're my cards. You can't have, you know what I mean? It's like, look, of course I want everyone to fucking have cards, but what's happened is it's this wave of just, you know, in-your-face TCG all over the place when it wasn't there before, I believe has really influenced and created a culture where it's less about the cards and more about the monetary value that the cards have. So This has created people that don't really care about the art. They don't care about the game. They only care about like getting cards graded, and they talk about getting cards graded, and they're probably never going to send a card to get graded. And then you have right, and then you have the scalpers. And this is all because all they're seeing all day long is this baller ass Pokemon Go YouTuber who just dropped 10 G's on, 20 cases of booster boxes and is pulling
not naming any names,
$500 Charizards left and right. It's like, everyone's like, doing the Birdman, hand rub, like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to fucking Target at 6 a.m. and I'm going to wipe them out. It's like, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about it. So we do have a panel coming up on that soon. So we'll sidestep that for now.
Wait, is this a bad time to mention that literally an hour before we recorded, I finished doing a live stream with my sister and I doing a booster box opening?
I cracked up when I saw your tweet. I was like, oh shit, I'm not even gonna respond.
So funny. That's so funny. But that's actually the second Pokemon card opening stream that I've done. And I love it. It's fun. I don't think I'm doing a good job, but I don't give a shit. It's fun.
Let's get back to Pokemon Go because there's plenty to talk about here. And, I do want to talk about the state of the game and how being in the podcast world, it's very difficult to kind of follow the ebbs and flows with our content when we're only putting out one show a week because things change so drastically from day to day in the game. So where are you guys at? You and Kyle, where are you at overall with your feelings on the game and the current state of the game? And how do you kind of take those feelings and transpose that into weekly content, knowing that, a day or two after you record or a day or two after you release the podcast, things can completely change. Like, how is that? That's got to be crazy. And I know it is as a podcaster, but what are your thoughts on that of creating a weekly show about a game that moves so crazily every 24 hours?
So, I mean, I think it's actually kind of a blessing. It keeps it really exciting. Every single week that we sit down to talk, it's about something new, and you really can't beat that. You know what I mean? That being said, on the other side of that coin is that it is incredibly hectic, and if you don't get your content recorded and up and out, it's outdated in 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? So there is that challenge for sure. But I would say, as far as our feelings on the game goes, I think our feelings that we express in our show is how we actually feel. Yes, we play certain roles, but at the end of the day, and at the end of any of our conversations about it, like, we both have good things to say and constructive things to say about any given topic. And I would say in particular right now, we haven't had a chance to connect about this, but I'm falling in love with the game again. It's the Kalos release. I've been so excited about the 40 plus experience. Like, catching Pokemon feels good again because it matters.
Dude, how often are you checking your menu to check your progress? Like, isn't it great to like have that to go back into and say, like, where am I at? How much more work do I need to do? It has brought such an incredible breath of fresh air back to the mundane grind. And I hear that from so many people. They're like, yeah, I'm getting up an extra hour early before work so I can go out and catch Pokemon, or I'm going to go out at night because, I think I could find a Froakie, at night, so I'm going to go out at night. It's amazing. Like, I love the state of the game right now. I mean, of course, you've got your issues with, GBL and lag and all that bullshit. It's like, whatever. That's fucking old news at this point. I love what the level cap has done for the game, and I cannot wait to see how seasons really roll out and kind of influence the landscape of the game, because we're already starting to see it, like how things have changed because of seasons. But I'm with you 100%. Like, I am so engaged right now. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be playing right now, and nothing but good things to say, honestly.
Nice. And what are your favorite ways to play? Like, how do you and Kyle typically play the game? Like, I know you did the 500 raids of summer last year, so you do a lot of raiding. But what are your preferred ways to engage with the game itself?
I pretty much do everything. I don't do anything in particular. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. But I do a little bit of GBL, nothing super hardcore. But I love raiding. And I really love the social aspect of the game, which has really been kind of replaced with a Discord experience this year in particular. But in the past, like nothing would be going to a raid hour and meeting up with a bunch of people and shooting the shit for an hour while, doing 10 raids or whatever the case might be.
So good.
And I miss GoFest's live events for my bread and butter for sure. But yeah, that's kind of how I play. I also love going out and just grinding, just catching Pokemon, going for a walk, using an excuse to exercise, kind of the basic sort of stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you were saying the with the re-engagement of the game, like I cannot wait for the later levels where you have to walk 25K for 8 weeks in a row. I fucking love that. Like so many people are like so discouraged. They're like, I'm never going to be able to do this. And I'm like, fuck, this is awesome. My fat ass will actually get outside and I have like, some motivation to like actually get out there and walk. I'm so excited. But no, that's cool. And I'm similar to you. I kind of do a little bit of everything. I love raiding. I spend way too much money on remote raiding. And,
Same.
Luckily, I've always been on that XP grind. You know what I mean? Like I play more now than I did in the beginning, but I never stopped buying lucky eggs. I never stopped doing friendship and using eggs during friendship and all that stuff. So I'm very excited for this journey to 50, but I'm taking it very slow, because I want to savor it. And also, all the shit is just going to happen passively anyway. So I don't want to spoil the journey. I'd rather just kind of stretch it out a little bit. But I'm fucking loving the game right now. I just absolutely love it. Now, we were talking about how you and Kyle have your perspectives on the game, and then they differ. I think something that's interesting with podcasting, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is, a podcast community is a very niche community. And the communities that each show has, they typically are going to align pretty closely to what the hosts believe in. More so than a YouTuber, where someone could be a fan of a YouTuber, but maybe not agree or align with them the way they would a podcast, because podcast gives you that real like friend kind of, person to person feeling. So do you find it difficult to speak to your own community while also being relevant to the community at large? I struggle with this all the time because, I'm like you, where I'm trying to find the silver lining, and I find when I bring that to the masses, they like shoot me down. They cut me off at the fucking knees. They call me a shill. They're like, fuck you. You're on Niantic's payroll. That's the only reason you like this. How could you like it? Like, how do you face those challenges of speaking to the people like your patrons and your own Discord community versus the millions that are, in the Pokemon Go community proper?
This is such an interesting question, because I think you're right. I think it is almost like if you're inconsistent between those two different venues of communication, are you being genuine or are you not? And how much of this is proper marketing and how much of this is just you being you, right? And where does that separation come from? And what's the right balance? It's such a difficult question. But I would kind of say that Kyle and I really focus more on just the core piece of content that we have, which is the podcast. The podcast comes first, and the podcast is the last thing that's going to go, right? And the rest of it is just part and parcel with that. The streams are an extension of the podcast community. The people that are in our Twitch chat are patrons, are listeners of the show. The people that follow us on Twitter are patrons, are listeners of the show, that sort of stuff. And so when I'm kind of talking in a public forum or making a social post, I really do gear it the same way that I do on the show. And I don't really like change the way that I talk about it that much, just because I feel like it's going to do nothing but get me in hot water or seem inconsistent or seem disingenuous. Now, that being said, I wish I had the balls that you do to ask the difficult questions. And every single time that you do, I'm like, oh shit. Oh, my boy's doing it. Look at him go. And I can tell you this, Ken, I load up your tweets and I go through everything. Whenever you post a hot, spicy question, I will spend an hour reading the reactions and the replies. And it's just, I love it. I love you for doing that. Thank you.
It's thank you for that. But I love that too, because, I'm on Twitter day and night. I'm plugged into the Matrix 24/7. I'm always fucking tweeting. But when I do these kind of spicy things that I know are talking about a divisive topic or something like that, I mean, the engagement on the tweets is out of fucking control. I mean, I've had tweets with, 1,200 responses. It's like out of control. And it's like I'll post something about like, the new feature Gen 6 is coming. It gets a couple likes, but then it's like I start talking shit and it's like 1,200 fucking comments. It's like I love that. But no, I think you nailed it. And I think that that's an extension of my feeling on it as well, is you have to remain consistent without alienating either of those groups, your core group or the community at large. It's a major challenge. And I love dancing on that line, because it's like, even when I'm completely impartial and I'm asking like a completely unbiased question and I'll give constructive feedback that isn't really leaning one way or the other, I try to, straight and narrow down the middle, I still get yelled at for being too far left or too far right on topic. So it's so much fun. And that's one of the cool things about Twitter. Now, I think Pokemon Go in particular, it's a little bit of a microcosm on Twitter, where the Pokemon Go community is clearly light years fucking bigger than Twitter, but it seems like the people on Twitter think that everyone is on Twitter. So it's like, if Twitter thinks so, then it has to be so. And it's like, no, it's kind of like 30 people on Twitter that think that way. They're really fucking loud, but there's like 30 million outside that don't think that way.
Absolutely. But to their credit as well, I mean, when Niantic will put up polls for like community days, where they post on Twitter. And so it just kind of feeds into that sort of mentality that, yeah, Twitter is the place to be for communication. That's also the main source of communication from Niantic as well as their tweets. Everything circles back to that. I mean, back to their blog for sure. But I think you're 100% correct. That is just a slice of the larger pie. And there are lots of people that just play this casually that are the bread and butter of their player base that never ever engage with Pokemon Go content on Twitter, just because they don't want that on their feeds. They use it for other things. They're following sports instead. Like, they have other interests. And yeah, the Pokemon Go Twitter space is,
it's so great.
Something. I love it. It's something
else. I love it so much, because I love like taking like. I ran out of popcorn last week. It's just constantly just fucking just watching shit go down. And it's like, this is so great. And it's like, it gets out of hand. And like the TCG and even the VGC, they have their issues as well. Like, there's a lot of shit that went down in the TCG community over the last week. And the past couple years have actually not been great for things in the VGC side. So like, there's a lot of shit that goes on. And typically it's all aired out on Twitter, but Pokemon Go, it seems like in particular, like they really fucking go hard on Twitter. And it's like, it's really only like a small handful of people, but they got megaphones, man. They're fucking loud as shit. And it's like, I love that. It makes it very entertaining. It makes it absolutely entertaining. But all right, so let's shift a little bit, because I have you here. I want to talk about podcasting in general, because I know that when we've hung out and when we've talked, offline, we end up talking about podcasting. And I love this format. I love this medium so freaking much. I'm an absolute advocate. I bump into someone at the supermarket and I'm like, hey, do you have a podcast? Like, I just love talking about podcasting. I have to talk about it all the time. So what is it about podcasting that you love? Now, for me, it's like I was saying earlier, I feel like I'm friends with the hosts that I listen to. So I feel so connected to them personally that I feel like when I'm listening to their show, it's like I'm calling them on the phone to find out how their day is. And then they just tell me on the podcast. So what is it about podcasting that attracts, what are you so attracted to about podcasting? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah, so I would start with saying that I couldn't agree more with the point that you just made. And I think that's really the anchor for me as well. And I think anybody that really, really, really loves podcasts has that at the core of why they love it, right? It's a connection. It's a very human connection. And especially at a time like this, that's incredibly valuable, invaluable, you might even say. But I would trace back the love of podcasting to a very particular moment when I was younger. This is even before I started podcasting myself and started even entertaining the idea of it. I was a huge World of Warcraft nerd for like over a decade. And in high school, back when I was in high school, it wasn't cool to play WoW yet. Is it cool to play WoW yet? Did they figure that out? I don't know.
It's cool. It's cool.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you. I'll sleep well. I'll sleep well tonight.
For the fucking horde. For the horde, baby.
But anyway, it was a constant battle. It's like, Chris, you should probably do your homework. Don't play WoW and stuff like that. And all I wanted to do was play WoW. And I just had this insatiable interest in that. And there was nobody to talk to about it. There was nobody that seemed to care about it in the same level that I did. So I was like, man, whatever. I was like Googling around and stuff, reading articles. I would go on forums and talk to people, but I really wasn't doing it. And I found these podcasts are now dead, but like World of Warcast and stuff like that, I would listen to these podcasts, and it was like, these are the friends that I wish I had in real life. Yes. And now I get to listen to them talking about like the things that I care about with the same veracity and with more knowledge than I do. And I'm learning stuff and I'm having fun. I'm laughing at their jokes. I feel like they get me. And I feel like that is the most engaging human part of podcasting for sure. And it's exactly what you just said. It's the whole friendship thing. But I think second to that is that it does cross a lot of boundaries that other mediums don't. I mean, art is timeless, but podcast is a conversation, which means it's more organic, right? So, I mean, we get emails from, kids in Australia, from old people in Vermont. Like we get from all over the place. Right. And it seems to transcend things like age, race, beliefs. And that's magic in and of itself, because we all come together in another common interest, and the rest of the stuff just kind of fades away. And especially in a world right now that's so aggressively divisive and wants to label you as this or that, going to a podcast is a personal choice and is therefore a safe, intimate experience.
Oh man, I love that description. You're absolutely right. It is very intimate because 9 out of 10 times if I'm listening to a podcast, it's me in the car. Or it's me by myself with headphones. So it's just me and the hosts. So it is a very intimate experience. Whereas like if you were listening to music, it would, you're kind of more of like a windows down and everyone can hear it. Podcasts, it's like it lives in my eardrums. I love that. It is a very intimate thing. What are you listening to outside of Pokemon Go? What are the podcasts that you listen to? I know we've connected in the past on Rooster Teeth. We both have, a love for Rooster Teeth, and I listen to a shit ton of their content. But what are you listening to now outside of Pokemon stuff?
Okay, so yeah, definitely. Well, it's not called Drunk Tank anymore, but I still call it Drunk Tank. But yeah, the RT podcast. I listen to a lot of Radiolab. I adore Radiolab. If you're ever trying to get somebody to start listening to podcasts, push them in the direction of Radiolab. It's an NPR podcast, and it's like Magic School Bus for adults. It is incredible. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll learn more about yourself than you care to learn, and all that sort of stuff. But also Last Podcast on the Left, which is a true crime. It's mostly a focus on paranormal and like cults and murderers and serial killers and demons and possessions and stuff like that. And they're hilarious. It's an incredible podcast, and I would recommend that upside down, backwards, any day of the week.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned WoW. I'm a reformed WoW player myself. So but I listened to The Instance. That was my show back in the day. Dude, me
too. I stole their format for our show. I love Scott Johnson. He's my hero, dude.
Dude,
Scott Johnson's my hero.
I fucking love that show so much. That show is so good. Definitely
the morning stream.
Yeah, man.
Oh man, all of it's so good.
That was like there was a time where I was so focused on WoW. It's kind of like Pokemon now, where it was like all I did was listen and consume WoW content, and The Instance was my go-to podcast. Like that was my shit. Back in the day, that was such a good fucking show. But I mean, it's like, I listen to so much Pokemon content, like so much that it's hard for me to branch out sometimes just because of time. And it was, before COVID, when I was commuting to work, I mean, I was commuting an hour each way every day. So, I mean, I had 10, 12 hours every week to listen to podcasts, and it was really easy to consume so much shit. Now it's like I'm not commuting. It's a lot different, and I have to be very selective with what I listen to, and I typically don't even get through full shows sometimes, which is a little bit of a bummer. But I mean, like I listen to Joe Rogan. I love Joe Rogan podcast.
Hell yeah.
Like I got to listen to that. I mean, he's a huge inspiration. He just had fucking Willie D from the Ghetto Boys on. It was one of the best podcasts I've heard in like years. It blew me the fuck away. I was like, I would not, like, it was Willie D and Mike Judge from Beavis and Butthead fame, you know? And I was like, oh shit, Mike Judge. And like, Mike Judge didn't say a word. It was Willie D talking the whole time. And I'm like, yo, I'm really interested in fucking Willie D. I went on his website. I fucking sent him an email, you know, like it was awesome. Again, that's the dynamic that podcasts bring. It's like, I want to talk to this person. Like I feel like I know that, you know, Willie D from the Ghetto Boys. It's like, yeah, motherfucker. It's like, I listen to your shit. So, you know, that's really awesome. But yeah, Rooster Teeth, man, that's, you know, that's very near and dear to my heart. And, you know, those troops, you know, those content creation troops have inspired me so much. Like, I'm a huge Kinda Funny fan. So Kinda Funny is like my absolute go-to. I listen
Greg
to
Miller.
Like, yeah, man. I listen to like 4 or 5 different Kinda Funny podcasts, you know, like I listen to all their shit. It's so freaking good. Here's a funny Greg Miller story. So back in the day, before Pokemon podcast stuff, Josh from the Special Conditions podcast, he's the host with Adam on our TCG podcast. So he ran a podcast with this dude, Jason, who had a site called Nintendo Inquirer. So it was like Josh and Jason, they had this show, and it was all about Toys to Life games. So like Skylanders, Amiibo, Lego Dimensions, that kind of shit. And I was the community manager for that podcast. Now, Greg Miller was a huge fucking Lego Dimensions fan, like a huge nerd for it. So Josh from Special Conditions actually did a panel at PAX with Greg Miller about
no
Lego
shit.
Dimensions. Like, I don't know, this had to be like 2014 or 15, something like that. It's like, and then now it's all come full circle, and it's like, I used to be his community manager. Now he's a co-host of a show on my network, and it's like, I just absolutely love that. And it's like, now I have like, I could say I have a little bit of like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon to Greg Miller, because I'm just such a fan.
For sure.
Here, how about this? My brother's roommate in college, the inventor of 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. He's the guy who did it. Isn't that fucking
shut up.
Isn't
that
crazy? I love telling people that, because now that skews their tree of 7 degrees, because now they can connect me to the guy that invented the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
That's what? That's 2 degrees from the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
I love that shit. I love that shit. No,
that's amazing.
But like I said, a lot of people were really interested in hearing us discuss and talk about podcasting from a technical side. So we can put the Pokemon stuff aside for a moment, and let's talk to the people that are interested in starting a podcast. And this is like my go-to conversation. Like, I love having this conversation, especially when I meet like small business owners or creative types or people that are just super nerdy about something and they don't know what to do with all that creative mojo and passion. I said, man, this podcast is for you. Like, this is exactly what you need to get that shit out of your head and onto the airwaves. So let's talk to that person. Let's talk about someone who's on the fence thinking about starting a podcast, or maybe had a podcast and bailed on it. What do you think is the best way a person can approach podcasting if they're just getting their foot in the door? What would be like your elevator motivational kind of speech to them to say, this is what you should think about if you want to get into this realm?
For sure. You know, my answer has changed to this question over the past decade of being involved with podcasting. But this is what I've landed on the past few years. And I really think, honest to God, that this is the genuine truth. Choose a topic that you are genuinely passionate about. Who gives a shit when anybody else thinks? At the end of the day, you're the one talking about it. And if you're going to do it episodically, because consistency is key in this sphere for sure, you need to find something that you can talk about endlessly.
I agree 110%. And, you know, following up on that, the reason you need to be passionate about this and that you have that deep ability to just speak on and speak on and speak on is because if you're bullshitting your listeners or not, you know, being true to the words you're saying, the listeners are going to know right away, like immediately.
100% of the time.
And there's so many times where like I'll find a new podcast and I'll be like, oh shit, they're combining D&D and Pokemon. I want to listen to this shit right now. And it's like I put it on and I'm like, ooh, I don't think this dude likes Pokemon, like, or something like that. Like you can see it, like it's palpable. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. But you nailed it. Consistency is the absolute key, and has been the biggest thing that any podcaster I know has struggled with of trying to figure out how to put out content consistently, because if you're like me, yeah, we're going to sit here and, we're 50 minutes into our recording and, we'll have an hour-long show, but I do like 4 hours of post-production. So it's different. So it's like, it's so hard to say like, okay, I'm going to record on this day and then I need to get it out on this day because I still have to do 4 times the amount of work just to clean this thing up and do all that. So you just have to figure out how you want to approach making the podcast. There's plenty of people that are exceptionally successful with recording a podcast, hitting stop, and then hitting upload. I'm not that person. I can't be that person.
No, and we connect on that level.
Yeah,
Ken.
that's
we
like
really do.
Pokemon Go Radio. The guys on Pokemon Go Radio, I bust their fucking chops all the time because they're always just like, "Oh, it's Nar's turn to edit." Blah blah blah. Right? So I was on their show, and I'm having them on next week, by the way. So I'll bust their balls about it.
Hell yeah! For the record, we love those dudes.
Oh yeah, no, they're great. They're fucking great. Get this. This is the greatest thing ever. I'll never let them live this shit down. So I'm on their show, right? I forget what night of the week we recorded on. So we record, and it's like, oh, Nar's got to edit this week. Can you email him the file? Blah, blah, blah. He's got to do all his mojo. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I send over my file. And I don't know when they release. Mondays is when their shows come out. So I get a fucking email on Sunday night, right? That says, hey, can you send that file over again? I got to do the edit. So I'm like, all right, no problem. I send the file over, and like within 2 minutes, the episode is published. Like, I mean, and I'm like, he was complaining so much about having to edit. I was like,
oh my God.
All he only did was hit upload. I was like, this motherfucker.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
It was so funny. So you have to figure out, like, if you're approaching podcasting, you have to figure out if you're okay with just getting the shit out, or if you're, you want to, rack your brain and do 4 hours of editing. Now, the episode 1 conundrum is typically the roadblock, and this is my recommendation for your episode 1. Just fucking record it and upload that shit and get it out.
Yep.
And it's like, that's the hump that so many people get caught up on, is they have idea, and then they record it and they play back and they don't like it and they don't release it. It's like, just like, I believe me, I've gone back and listened to the early episodes of Lured Up. Pokemon Go Radio was on episode number 1 of Lured Up. And it's like,
really? Oh, hell yeah.
They were our first guests. Cause like I was doing Pokemon podcasting for a year prior to Pokemon Go coming out. I was just, I had a podcast about the anime, which is still running. Gotta watch them all, So it's like that when I did we talked about Pokemon Go on that show. So it was like when we were ready to branch off into our own feed for the Pokemon Go show for Lured Up, it was like, yeah, we brought Pokemon Go Radio on. But it's you totally fucking nailed it. You have to be genuine. You have to be genuinely passionate about what you're talking about, because people will see through that shit immediately. But just get the episode out. Just like record it and get it out. I think that's the best way to look at and approach episode 1. And then after you get that first episode out, then you could start thinking about, okay, well, what do I really want to do this? How do I want to do this?
It's an organic process for sure. And more to what you just said about recording episode 1 and getting it out there. I tell this to everybody that starts a new podcast. After I say you should start a podcast, I say, but episode 1 is going to suck regardless of what you do. At least you're going to think that it sucks. Other people are going to love it, but it's not going to be the vision that you have. You have to work to it like anything else. It's a practice skill.
Right. Just get it out. Just get it out the door. I think that's super important. Now, the next question I get from everyone who's interested in podcasting is, what equipment do you need? And this is what I say. You have a phone? They go, yep. I go, you're done.
Yep.
I go, if it comes down to it in its most basic form, you can get a pretty fucking good recording off your iPhone with the earbuds that come with your phone. You can. So it's like, you shouldn't, like, I hate when people say, oh, I don't have the equipment and that's what's preventing me from doing a podcast. It's like, I understand, because you want it to sound great, you want it to sound good, you want this and that. But if you're at the point where you don't have gear and you just need to podcast, if you have a phone, you've got everything you fucking need. Just go for it. Now, you want to take it to the next level, you need $100. You need a computer and $100. Because you could buy like a blue Snowball for like $79.99 or like a blue Yeti for like $129.99, and you're good to go for years. Like a USB mic, you are good to go. So check out Blue microphones. I recommend them. There's some cheaper, like a Shure USB microphone too, $100. The Rode Podcast, what's it called? The Pod Mic. The Rode Pod Mic is $100. Really good quality. You know, then
Rodecaster.
Yep. And then it bumps up to like, there's like a $300 or $400 microphone tier, and then there's like $1,000, $1,500, microphone tier. But that $100 or so USB microphone is you're absolutely good to go. Check out Blue microphones. That's the brand is called Blue.
You'd be surprised how many people that do this for a living have Yetis.
Absolutely. They just use Yetis. Yeah, I'm recording on a Yeti right now. I've recorded probably gorgeous. I don't know, the last fucking 100 episodes I've recorded on a Yeti. I've got a Shure SM7B in front of me right now that I don't have completely dialed in yet, so I'm not using it for actual shows, but the Yeti is the way to go. So, don't let the equipment hold you back, because it's a pretty inexpensive thing. Now, if I was like, oh man, I want to start a band, I'm going to play guitar. It's like, all right, I need to buy a guitar. I need to buy an amp. I need to buy cables. I need to buy a guitar case. I need to buy, all this shit. Podcasting, it's like $100. You're fucking in the door. You're in the door. So I absolutely love that.
And I'd also add to that really quick though, too, is that as far as software is concerned, Ken and I both use Audacity, and that's a free software. We use that to make all of our content. And you can go find Audacity and download it for free. It's always been free and always will be free. And I've used it for a decade. You don't need to buy a $100 suite from Adobe or anything like that to get started. Are those tools powerful and great to use? Well, yeah, absolutely. But you can do amazing stuff with some free software out there, Audacity in particular.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm a huge fan of Audacity. I love it.
Me too.
And I do all my posts. Like, I know plenty of people that record in Audacity and then they do their posts somewhere else. It's like I do everything soup to nuts, from recording to all my post-production, all my editing to saving the file. Everything is done in Audacity, free software. So freaking great. I'll put a link in the description to Audacity if you want to give it a shot. And like every time I have a guest on that's never done a podcast before, even like some of these YouTubers that have like, $3,000 DSLRs and all this fucking crazy shit. And it's like, they have no idea how to use like a recording program. It's and I'm like, download Audacity, set your microphone, set your speakers, you hit record, you hit stop, you hit export, done. I go, that's it. That's all you need to worry about. There's 1,000 buttons in the fucking thing. You just need to know where to record, where to hit stop, and how to export the file. And you're done.
Easy.
Done and done.
Easy.
Love that shit. And then the final question I get, and I'm interested to see what your team uses, but is hosting. Now, when you record a podcast, that podcast has to live somewhere. It has to be hosted by a company, hosted by a brand that then takes that podcast and syndicates it out to all the different locations. So I use a company called Libsyn, where I take my file, I upload it, I put the description, I put the episode number, I put all that shit, and then when I publish it on Libsyn, Libsyn then puts it in an RSS feed that they then send to Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that shit. And then that costs money. So it's like you have to pay to play when it comes to podcasting. There are some free options out there that don't give you all the bells and whistles and all that stuff, but you will need to upload your podcast to a host and get that out if you want your RSS feed to cover the gamut of, where podcasts can be heard. Who do you use? What's your hosting company?
So I've used a bunch over the years. I've used Podomatic, I've used Podbean, but right now I use Buzzsprout, and I absolutely adore them. Buzzsprout does the same thing that every other hosting site does. You upload it to there and it generates an RSS feed, but they have a really great UI and menu, which allows you to submit it to a bunch of other places rather easily, which sounds like exactly what you have set up over there at Libsyn as well. So I couldn't recommend Buzzsprout enough. I love them to death.
Yeah, I actually watch all the Buzzsprout how-to videos on YouTube.
They're great.
They're awesome. They are awesome. You know what? I'll put a link in the description too, because they have like a great podcast 101 series. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in podcasting, check out the description. Check out these Buzzsprout videos because they really walk you through everything from selecting a microphone to, you know, how hosting works and how editing works. Like, it's awesome. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was thinking about moving over there, but it's like I've been with Libsyn for years. I have all my shows with them. You know, it's like, it's a big deal to make a switch. It's like, I'm so scared.
For sure.
I'm so scared.
Libsyn is also just a giant in this field. Everybody recognizes the name if you're a podcaster of Libsyn.
Yeah, it's you pay for it too. Like, you know, you pay to be hosted by Libsyn, but it's like, I mean, like Joe Rogan is on the homepage. You know, like a lot of big shows are done through Libsyn, so that's really cool. But I think, Chris, I think we're in unison here when we say that podcasting is probably one of the easiest creative outlets to get something done and out the door. So much, like, when you think about all the editing and all the stuff that has to go behind, like, creating a YouTube video, and it's like, oh wait, I could just sit in my desk in my underwear and, you know, hit record and be done. It's like,
that's what I'm doing right now.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I can't encourage, you know, the listening body right now. If you're really interested in podcasting, please give it a fucking shot. Call me up, email me. I will walk you through it. That's how much I love podcasting, that, you know, I advocate constantly for this format. I just think that this medium is absolutely awesome. And it's always good to talk to someone who feels the same way about podcasting, because I love nerding out about this shit, because it's a very niche thing. And, you know, you started podcasting in 2010. I was listening to podcasts in 2010. I wasn't doing it. So it's like, you know, having that much time in the medium just, you know, reinforces the, you know, how dedicated you are to podcasting itself. I think that's fucking awesome, man. That's super cool. It's super inspiring.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I do. That being said, I haven't learned shit since I started, so. Awesome. I'm joking, of course, but
I know where to
couldn't tell you what it is.
I can hit stop and export. It's like,
okay, I did what Ken said. I have Audacity. I'm sitting in my computer. I don't have pants on, just my underwear. Okay, I'm ready to go.
Yep. I love that shit. I always bust Adam's balls too, and I'm like, dude, can you edit this week? Like, he's never edited a podcast, like one of
Kyle's
our
never
shows.
edited either.
So it's like,
no.
I always bust his chops because I'm like, bro, you don't know how good you have it, man.
But it's because we're control freaks, Ken.
Absolutely.
It's got to be done the way it's always been done.
I told him, I go, if you edit it, I'm just going to edit it when I get the file too. So don't worry. Right. All right, man. Well, I digress. But as we wrap up, man, 2020 has been fucking nuts. You know, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that you and I did the Niantic GoFest virtual lounge trivia show live with Salema Masekela on the official Pokemon Go YouTube channel. That was an amazing experience. Talk about
incredible.
You know, being in your underwear and recording at home to working with like a 20-person production staff, call times at like 3 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m. Like, it was so intense. It was absolutely so intense. But how fucking awesome was that? Was that not the coolest shit, man? That was so great.
It was definitely like I feel like I've made it sort of experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those 3 a.m. calls though. Hey, I gotta put something out there for everybody listening. Ken is a superhuman. I put myself down for like, you know, an hour and a half naps in between these different call times and stuff like that. Or we would come in for like call and Ken'd be like, yeah, I haven't slept. I'm on my 15th coffee. And, you know, I did a little bit of part-time work in between these takes as well. I'm like, dude, shut up. Oh my God. I'm like struggling to stay awake. He's like, let's go. Let's just go. Come on.
Well, one of our call times was in the middle of the day. And I was like, I'm not going to sleep during GoFest. Like, I'm going to go out there and grind. And it's like, you were like, yeah, I just woke up from a nap. I'm like, dude, I already caught 700 Pokemon today. So great. But what about the rest of 2020? There's not much left, but any plans for the final push through the end of the year?
Yeah, you know what? I'm really kind of community focused, and I have been for this past half of this year. I really have to hand it to our patron community and our listening community at large. We have an entire section at the end of our show dedicated to voicemails and emails, and it continually becomes a larger, more integral and important part of our show. And so, you know, we're just kind of like hanging out in there and really focusing on doing community-based stuff. But as far as like, you know, any like sort of goals or goalposts that we're trying to meet by the end of this year, it's really to just be consistent and get our content out, because this is such a crazy part of the year. I don't want to miss streams if I don't have to. I don't want to miss episodes if I don't have to. And if I can figure out a way to make more content, I want to make that happen. And that's really the focus right now. Nothing too particular, just like, let's get through.
Nice.
And so we can breathe and then make a plan again.
Awesome. And what about 2021? Anything on the horizon? Anything you're, looking forward to dipping your toes in? Anything new?
Yeah, so I really wanted to, Kyle and I have been talking about making it into a video podcast for a very long time, and I really want this to be the year that I convince him that we should do that, and then it's okay.
Nice, yeah.
I'm really interested in doing that. I really want streaming to become more of an integral part of what we do, and that means bringing the podcast to the stream as well, and not necessarily just, the art streams and the game streams, which are great, but the podcast needs to be there too in some way.
Yeah. I think that's a direction that we were talking about too, trying to figure out a way to make it more of a visual production and not just, two Zoom windows, of faces, right. Like make it a little bit more robust. I love that though, man. I think that's a natural progression for audio podcast, is to break into a visual medium, and then you still have your audio, which is great because you could still put it out as your audio show, and then you have a visual component as well, and it just creates a wider scope of people that you can get in front of. And I think that's
absolutely.
I think that's awesome. I mean, like, look at Joe Rogan. I mean, he crushes it. He'll record a 3-hour podcast, and then from that 3-hour podcast is able to make 50 pieces of video content from it. And it's like, when you look at that model, it's like, oh, that's like what Gary Vee has been telling me to do for 10 years. It's like, I really need to start doing this. But
you're right. Hustle. How do I spell that?
Yeah,
again?
Exactly. That's fucking great, man. But yeah, and I think that the in-person events is really something I know that I'm looking forward to, and I know you're the same way.
Yeah.
You're just like, I mean, what was it for St. Louis Safari Zone or something, something was happening. And you were like, Legendary Moo was like, dude, just come fucking stay on my couch or some shit. It's
So we wanted to do St. Louis. We had all these plans set up. We had people that were coming, kind of international, and we were like making plans. I already had places picked out for us to go get dinner afterwards, and I was like calling places, making reservations, and then that got shot in the foot because
I was so bummed. Bummed.
It was a real bummer, and I just can't wait to see all my friends again. I can't wait to shoot the shit and stumble around a city with you again, dude. That's gonna be fun.
I remember at Monk's Pub getting poutine with no gravy on it so I could eat it. You're like, that ain't fucking poutine.
I remember you and me and Terry Wolf trying to go to a convenience store to find an extension cord. An extension cord, because
that's when we ran into Liz on the street. She was going to see the Game Grumps. I was like, what the
Game
fuck?
Grumps live.
Yeah, it was so cool. Man. Now Terry, he sent it to you too. He put it in a text. He sent that picture of the three of us. I was like, that's fucking great, because we did a raid, me, you, and Terry, a remote raid. And then he sent the picture. I was like, oh shit, look at that! It's like the three of us were back together again. It's so great. Man, I absolutely love that. But dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love this shit. I love this so much. I feel like, I could talk to you for fucking hours about Pokemon and content and all this shit. But thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Please plug away, shout outs, promotions, anything you want. Please let our community know where they can find you and the GoCast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd first like to say thank you as well, Ken, and I feel the same way. We don't do this nearly enough, whether the recording light is on or off. I'd really like to hang out more often and talk, because, we have so much in common. I really could talk to you for hours as well. But as far as the business side of things go, you can find everything GoCast related at GoCastPodcast.com. You can also just, find us in the related tab, probably to lure it up in your favorite podcast catcher or app or whatever you like to use. GoCast Podcast. You can find us there as well. Follow us on Twitter at GoCast Podcast. We've also got a Facebook. You can find us there. We're pretty much everywhere. GoCast Podcast, one word, put the space in there. It doesn't matter. We will pop up, and that's what you're looking for. I'd also like to plug our 2 PvP contributors we have, DeFi250 and Fish on a Heater. The 2 of them make excellent PvP content on Twitch, and you can find them at those handles I just described, and they do a PvP corner section on our show every single week now. So I'd like to send them lots of love and support, and shout out obviously to my community, mine and Kyle's community, I should say. Love them to death, and we would not still be doing the show, at least not in the capacity that we are, without you. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the PvP corner. That's good shit. And DeFi is my favorite. She's like absolutely one of my favorite PvP creators out there. I love her fucking approach. It's just so chill. Yeah. It's so relaxed. But like,
we're so lucky to have them.
It really, it's that you got some good peeps going on over there. But dude, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate being here.
All right, everyone else, this has been an episode of the Lured Up Podcast Creator Series. Thank you so much. Please check out luredup.com for everything that's going on with the show, PokemonProfessor.com for everything that's going on with the network. We got some new merch up at PokemonProfessor.com/merch. Please check that out. And I think that's it. That's pretty much it. So keep training, trainers. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you. Trinity Force sucks. Listen to LeakCast.